Welcome to What I Wish I Knew at 30. Today's guest is a man who doesn't just cater events, he orchestrates culinary experiences on the world's biggest stages. Meet Peter Wright, Managing Director of Global Hospitality Group, veteran of mega events like the Olympic Games, the Rugby World Cup in Japan, and even the mud, music, and mayhem of Glastonbury Festival. From feeding thousands of athletes to serving a 250,000 strong festival crowd, Peter's expertise spans global logistics, gourmet performance, and hospitality innovation. He's also a proud advocate with the Australian Culinary Federation and a mentor to the next generation of chefs and service professionals. Get ready for stories from the front lines of hospitality, sharp insights on managing high pressure events, and plenty of behind the scenes gold from a chef turned global stage operator. Peter, welcome to the show. Did I miss anything out? And I must have over.
Well, no, it was a very, very nice introduction. Thank you, Fran, and thanks for doing your homework as well.
I know it almost seems a bit creepy, doesn't it? It's sort of,
Yes.
I spend this time, but we've talked a lot as well. So
Yeah,
I do
exactly.
know where you've been over the years, I guess. And of course, we follow social media is a wonderful thing because it highlights everything that's going on and the amazing life that you lead that we all sit back and probably envy in some ways, sort of where you travel in the world doing what you love.
Well, yeah, well, it's it is quite humbling sometimes, but be careful what you wish for is what my advice is.
That's right. Because the next time you're short on staff, you can call me.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
Peter, you're 30 years old again. Where are you? What are you doing? And what's going through your mind at that stage of life?
Well, yeah, 30 years ago doesn't seem like that long ago, but a lifetime ago, exactly half of my life was 30 years ago. Well, I was an expecting father. I was working at the Melbourne Cricket Ground. We'd just finished the Cricket World Cup in 1992. Essendon had won the premiership and Gavin Wanganeen had won the Brownlow. So it was a pretty successful year, I thought, at that time,
Yeah.
sitting on top of the world. We'd also been to the Culinary Olympics in 92. My culinary career was expanding and I was, being the egotistical chef of the time and all those sorts of things. And
I don't know.
yeah, that was pretty much where it was all at.
Did you feel that you had life figured out at 30, or do you think you were just
Definitely.
winging it?
No, definitely. No, I definitely had it sorted out. I had a plan. I had a goal. No. To be honest, winging it is the right answer. So I guess
I was impressed for a minute there, Peter. I thought, wow.
No. Yeah, I guess if you think of it back in those days, being a chef, you left school when you were 16 or 15 or 16, whatever, did an apprenticeship. You were fairly, let's say, unacademic, and you took opportunities as they came. And you dreamt of being the executive chef or, being in charge or, sort of, something that you could hang your hat on. And everything was about work and cooking and being the best chef and, all those sorts of things. So, winging it would be an understatement. Being in a position to take opportunities, I guess, was the critical, the critical path that you need to be on. It was, and there was plenty of opportunities in Melbourne, in the early 90s. So, it was a good time to be a young chef.
Absolutely. And of course, also in that environment of the Melbourne Cricket Ground, an amazing place to start your career.
Well, it was interesting because I was working at the Melbourne Hilton, which had the Cleveland Room at the time, and that was, say, the best restaurant in Melbourne, or one of. There was Fanny's and Glows and the Cleveland Room, but the bunny was crap. You worked in a place where you were learning, and because people took advantage of you back then, they were allowed to. You'd work 60 hours a week, get paid for 40. You come in early, work late. You do everything the boss wanted but it was normal. It was expected. It was, and so I had a part-time job even back then. I was
Wow.
working at the Vic Arts Centre, casual, and I could earn almost an equivalent salary working 20 hours casual as I could working 60 hours at the Hilton. So anyway, a job came up at the MCG. It was the same company, Spotless Catering, or it was the O'Brien's business back then.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
And they said, "Oh, there's a job going at the MCG," and I'm going, "MCG? Surely not." Like, I've been to the MCG, hot dogs, pies, and chips, and lots of cold beer. And to be honest, I thought, wow. And then, you know, went home, discussed it with my wife, and said, "Oh, there's this job," and we were going, "Oh, MCG," but I was working at the best restaurant in Melbourne,
Yeah.
and of course, ego plays a big part. Anyway, I went to the interview, and one of my before cooking, I used to love cricket. Anyway, I'm at the Melbourne Cricket Ground, and they had this thing called a corporate box. They had 34 corporate boxes, and had an interview in this corporate box. There was a Sheffield Shield game on in the background. Someone brought in some scones and tea, and had this interview. Went into this brand new kitchen. It was probably 6 months old, and I'm going like, wow, they want me to run this kitchen. I'm going, wow, how exciting. And talked about salary, and they paid overtime, and the
Wow.
salary was like, oh my goodness, I couldn't believe, like, it was like I was dreaming to be, pinch myself. And then we walked around, and they had the members restaurant, the long room, and the members, all this stuff going on.
Um,
And I'm thinking, wow, this is incredible. So I accepted the job, and I guess that was first life-changing experience. Thinking my path was fine dining, getting screamed at every day, and the pressure and the of à la carte, to just jumping into catering, which is something I'd never done before.
Amazing. But look now.
Well, yeah, I guess, the biggest challenge at the time, you know, we're running this stadium, and and Spotless had just bought the O'Brien business, and probably one of the biggest mistakes was cleaning out a whole lot of old O'Brien staff and trying to do it. So, we were sitting with the ladies who used to make the sandwiches, for example, and asking, well, what goes on in this room and what goes on in that room, and how many sandwiches do I need for here, and they're writing everything down because there was no computers
All
back
that
then either.
wisdom, all that
All
wisdom
that
coming
wisdom.
out.
So yeah, it was an exciting time, and the first test match came and went pretty quickly. Probably the biggest learning curve, you've ever had in your life, and it was, yeah, all great.
Yeah, a lot of expectation on that. I mean, the MCG obviously is renowned for its food
Yeah,
and its hospitality. So it's a whole ecosystem, isn't it? It's a whole process to
well, it is,
actually, the
and
rich
it's
and famous of Melbourne hang out there.
and from where it was there, I mean, that was when corporate catering became a thing, and
Yeah.
that's when people outside the members could
Mm.
actually sit behind glass and watch events, and it was so successful, and it still is. I mean, now
Yeah.
I believe they can sit 14,000 people
Wow.
behind glass. It's 100 millions,
On level
hundreds of
2.
millions worth of business. Yeah.
Amazing. So looking back at that time, Peter, what was your biggest dream at that time? Did life take you where you expected?
Well, I guess no, yes and no. I mean, my biggest dream back then was to be the executive. Still, I wanted to be the executive chef.
Yeah.
I still had this thing of, I don't know. It was hard to be settled, I guess. You're not sure about, your own self, your own value. Are
Mm.
you doing a good job? And being in a big catering company, there was so many opportunities. So,
Mm.
and you could see what was going on. So, there was different wheels were turning. But the art centre, and I had worked there, as I mentioned, but the art centre was the pinnacle in the spotless crown, I suppose. And
Okay.
being the executive chef of the art centre was like the best job that you could get in Spotless. And of course, that's what I wanted to be. I wanted the best job,
No one cares
and
who comes
still,
second.
and still, that desire to be, one of Melbourne's recognised chefs, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was, the chef's ego still hanging around, and lo and behold, a couple of years later, landed the executive chef job at the Art Centre.
Focus is a wonderful thing, isn't it? When you focus on what you want,
Yeah,
it's, well, actually knowing what you want and then
yeah.
focusing on what you want,
But
I think it's far easier to get the steps towards that than when you don't know what you want.
then to get it, then you've got it. What's next? You're
Yeah.
straight away pivoting to what's next. And all the jobs I've had and all the events we've done, I think the Art Centre was probably one of the most difficult jobs.
Okay.
It was operated almost 20 hours a day.
Yeah.
It wasn't, it wasn't at the heyday that it was maybe in the late 80s.
Mm.
Financially, it wasn't as busy. There wasn't as many shows. And, when the opera's on and all those sort of things, it's easy to
Yeah.
make money. And,
Yeah.
you know, the bosses are happy. But when it's the downtime, it's hard
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
maintain your staffing levels and cost of goods and all that business stuff. So the
Mm.
pressure of all that. So I actually went first time ever to see an agency, you know, because I've done the best job in Spotless.
Yeah.
I've
Yeah. So
been there
what's
now,
next?
been there almost 9 years,
Yeah.
looking for the next horizon. And this I say dickhead, this guy says to me, "Well, you're an industrial chef, you know, you're this and you're that." And I was destroyed. I left that meeting absolutely.
Wow.
It was it was one time in my life where I almost wanted to grab the guy's throat across the desk. I was that sort of, I didn't know what was going on. Like,
No.
what he was saying and what I was thinking, really put me back in a box. And I thought, "Well, what am I gonna do?" And he said, "Oh, you might be able to get a sous chef job in a hotel." And I'm going, Sous chef?" Like, oh my God.
Do you know who I am?
It was almost like being face slapped. Anyway,
Yeah.
so anyhow, I'd been to the Culinary Olympics, we'd won gold medals, I was executive chef at the Arts, and I thought I was in the top of the town. And so a couple of weeks after that, there was this, I was looking in the newspapers for jobs all the time, and I saw this ad for a project manager to work in Hong Kong. And it was to work for the hospital authority in Hong Kong to build this cook chill facility to provide all
Wow.
the food for all these hospitals. And friends of ours had lived in Hong Kong, and the 90s in Hong Kong was so
Amazing.
exciting.
Yeah. So much going on.
At that stage, I had a young son, about 1.5 years old. Anyway, they were doing a briefing at the Rialto. So, and I'd worked at the Rialto for a little bit, so I was, quite excited, and things were aligned. I went there, went to this briefing. There was all these architects there and all these companies, and here's me on my own. I'm thinking, oh man, maybe this is not for me. And the guy who was in charge was this Aussie guy, Andrew Jones, and he said, we had a chat afterwards, and he goes, "Oh, yeah, write a tender and send it across." And back then it was fax machines.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
The computers weren't that did. So I wrote a tender. I hand wrote, responded to it first. My first ever tender. I hand wrote it and faxed it. Anyway, I got shortlisted and had to go to Hong Kong, and it was very overwhelming. I land there and it's so hot, and I booked this crappy hotel in Kowloon, and it's 3 meters by three
And
meters,
they were crappy
cockroaches,
hotels back in those days.
and it's hot, and the
Yeah.
air conditioning was anyway. I have to go to this presentation, and I recall that I'm sitting waiting, and I was early, suit on, and it's hot, and I'm sweating under the suit, and I'm nervous, and I was terrified of public speaking back then.
That's changed, Peter.
Yes, and anyway, I waited, and an hour goes by, and I'm thinking, "Oh man, am I in the right place?" Blah 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 blah. So the door opens, and 10 people walk out, and they've got us like, the old overhead projector screens where you put the slides, all
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
They've
yeah.
got that. They've got a thing, and I've got a notepad and myself. So I think, "Oh my God, this is so embarrassing." So I walk in, and there's 10 people around this huge board table, and they're all hospital chief executives and the project manager and stuff. And I did my spiel, and And I always say this is, you know, success is how you measure it, but small conversations change your life. And I said to them, "Is there any final words?" And I said, "Look, there's one thing I have that all your other candidates don't have." I said, "I don't have an ultimatum to take over your business. I'm not a catering company that wants to take over your business." I said, "I can build your project. I can plan it. I can build it. I can design it. I can do all your recipe development. I can train your chefs. I can do the whole lot within the 2-year time frame, right? And I don't have an agenda to do anything else. Just work for you, right?" And that was it, left. So I go back to the hotel and then lying on this bed, it's in a pool of sweat, thinking I'm going to go out and drink beer, as much beer as I can. I've had an experience. I go home and that's it. And the phone rings and it's this guy and he says, "Can you just tell me what you meant by that?" You know, and I said, "Well, you know, this is what I think. You've got my undivided attention. I can do all the facets of your project." Went home and said to Jill, my wife, I said, "Well, guess what? We're going to Hong Kong and
Amazing.
beat all these companies and handwritten tender." And I thought to myself, "Oh my God, you know, this is the
Fantastic.
luck of the draw." But that was probably one of the biggest life-changing experiences. I mean, it was a hell of a lot of fun. Like, it was so much fun. It was the handover, it was the whole, and of course, 97 came around with the handover and all expats
Hong
were
Kong.
expelled.
Yeah,
No more
yeah,
contracts, so which was
yeah.
good.
I was actually on the last flight out of Hong Kong when it was handed back to the Chinese, and we were given me and the kids were on the flight, and we were given certificates saying this was the last day of the British.
Yeah, it was a pretty
I
big
wouldn't say Republic or
time.
something else. Yeah, no, it was. Yeah, it definitely was. So, Peter, looking back now, what's something you were completely wrong about at 30?
Well, I guess, being 60, it's easier to.
Hindsight's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, it's right. It's easy to sort of to look back, but, when you're 30, you know, short term is next week and long term
Yeah.
is maybe Christmas or next Christmas. So everything's about, you think, wow,
True.
long-term strategies is, now when I look at it, it's such short term.
Mm,
I look at what goes on that, people talk about loyalty now. There's no loyalty in business. People, as soon as you've employed someone, they're looking for another job and all that sort of stuff.
yeah.
Working for a big organization like Spotless that had many opportunities, I had sort of, I think, so when I came back from Hong Kong, I worked back with Spotless for another 9 years. So
Okay.
over 18 years, I probably had 12 business cards.
Yeah. Yeah.
So in fact, when I look back, I go, well, you changed jobs every 18 months almost
Mm,
for, over that period of time where, but, people criticize young people because, oh, there's no loyalty and all that sort of stuff. But it depends on the opportunity you have. So I think I was wrong about time and, probably rushed things, probably moved on too quick as
mm.
well without completing things properly. The other thing, I guess, I thought everyone was as motivated as I was. I thought everyone got up in the morning and wanted to work 12 hours and,
Yeah.
fill your head full of stuff until you get, you can't think anymore and all that sort of stuff. And I had a couple of really interesting experiences. We were doing a small project in head office with Spotless, and we were trying to work out how to make more money, of course. And we were evaluating 5 business streams, and if we could almost have the same menu and the same theme across 5 different business models, then we could roll it out and, you could buy less food and have less,
Yeah. Yeah.
less
Economies
things
of
in your
scale,
pantry and
people.
all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, I go and visit this guy and, it's like 2:30 in the afternoon, and he kept looking at his watch, and I go, "What do you keep looking at your watch for?" He goes, "Oh, well, I finish at 3." I go, "Yeah, well, we'll be done by 4. Don't worry about it." And he goes, "No, mate. No, no, no. I finish at 3." He goes, I live down near the beach." He goes, "I'm going home. I'm going for a surf this afternoon." I'm going down, Morty Alec or wherever he was, Mornington or somewhere. And I go, "What? On a Wednesday afternoon? What are you talking about?"
So you should be here till 10 o'clock at least tonight.
I said, "No, no, you're gonna go home and do all this work for me for tomorrow." He goes, "No way, mate." He goes, "I'll do it when I come back tomorrow." And I thought to myself, "Oh, this guy's I'll say dickhead again. This
Yeah,
guy's a dickhead. What a loser." And, then another guy I promoted, which I thought I was doing the right thing. And, with the promotion came, a mobile phone and a company car and $5,000 and, all this sort of stuff. And this guy leaned across the table and abused me and said, "Don't you think I've got enough to do? You just want to give me more work." Oh, whoa, 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 whoa. And I'm like, holy, you know, step back. I thought, wow, I've never knocked back a promotion in my life. Even if I couldn't do it, I'd learn how to
you'd
do it. I
learn
go,
it.
well,
Yeah,
5 grand, a company car, my goodness. But, it really, those small things really make you realize that everybody's completely different. Everyone's got different goals, desires. You measure success.
yeah.
What's successful for me or you or the guy
Mm.
who wants to go surfing in the afternoon? It's a different measure. So, those are the sort of things I probably got wrong,
Yeah. Did you, I mean,
which were good life lessons.
absolutely. I mean, when you look back at that now, and I think you and I are fairly much the same in the way that sort of we work and the hours that we've thrown into careers. And like when you look at that now, I mean, do you see that there is that actually having more of a life work balance would have been beneficial, or would you change any of that?
Well, that's a really, really good question. I do believe life-work balance is important.
Mm,
Depends how you analyze it.
mm,
Like, not to be disrespectful to anyone, but along the way, I hear, people get married and they're gonna have children, or they're not married and they're having children these days. Marriage so it doesn't really amount to much. But, "Oh, my wife's having a baby. I need to, take 2 weeks off, around these days." And I say, "Listen, you don't need to take time off when your wife's had a baby." I said, "The worst person in the world once your wife's had a baby is you." I said, "You need to be as far away from that as you can be." And they go, "Oh, you're so horrible, blah, blah, blah." And then, of course, they have the time off, and they come back and they go, "Oh, you were right," you know, "There's nothing I can do, right? There's nothing I could do." And I say, "Yeah, you're right." But anyway, so life work balance, do you wanna provide the best life for your family and enjoy yourself as you go? Or do you wanna spend more time with your family?
mm.
It's how you look at it.
Tough one, isn't it?
It's a lemon
Mm.
into a health drink. It's sort of,
Yeah,
which one is it? Where,
yeah. It's true,
and,
it's true
where
enough.
can you add more value? And it also depends on strengths and weaknesses. Where are your strengths and weaknesses, your partner's strengths and weaknesses? It's a whole, you know, if you've got kids, are the kids all balanced and everything's okay, or does one need more help? But, there's so many things that have
Variable.
factors in it, and sometimes you wanna be lazy, I call it work-life balance, you
Yeah,
know? I'm gonna be lazy today,
fair enough.
have a lazy day, but,
Isn't it funny though
you know
that we see that as, whether lazy is a negative connotation or like, sort of, is it being lazy or are we resting?
yes, rest you well.
I would say the same. I say I have a lazy day today, but actually a resting day and how important that is these days. And I
Absolutely.
think, especially
Yeah,
hindsight's a wonderful thing, but, you know, if your health hasn't been looked after, as I well know, and something can hit you, it's a brick wall and there's nothing you can do without your health. But Peter, they say that life is the best teacher, and sometimes the lessons come wrapped in disaster. So let's talk
mm.
about the biggest curveballs that life has thrown at you. I mean, obviously, you completely ignored the agency guy, but whether it was in business, relationships, or personal growth, what's an experience that at the time felt like the worst thing, but actually probably really ended up shaping you?
Well, I think, yeah, for me, as I mentioned before, public speaking was quite hard, and when we had to do tenders and pitches for tenders when I was with Spotless, it was terrifying for me. I mean, I used to physically shake. I remember presenting for the Sydney Olympics, and we worked hard on the tenders, and it was interesting because Spotless did a joint venture with Aramark from the US, and they'd done the 14 of the previous Olympics, so they were experts. They were, wow, oh my God, we're experts.
Yeah.
In hindsight, they were, but at the time, it's in Australia, and we're running the show. You're not running the
Yeah.
show. You
Yeah.
might be experts,
This
but
is
we're running the show.
Australian. This is Australian.
This is how we do it, mate. Anyway, and I remember we had to do this thing at the Sydney Zoo, and we sat around at Spotless, and they said to me, we've got to make this room look like an athlete's village, and we're all going, what does an athlete village look like? And then the Aramark's guys go, oh, it's a big white tent. It's just a big white tent. So we're going to make this. So I go, oh yeah, because I used to work at the Art Centre, and I knew the guy who built the stages for the opera, all
Yeah,
those
yeah.
themed stages. I said, oh, I know this guy builds stuff. I talked to him, and they go, yeah, that's a great idea. And remember, I'm working for the business development team of Spotless. It's procurement. It's
Yeah.
basically that procurement team. So, with these Aramark guys, and anyway, so off I go, meet this guy. He says, oh yeah, and he's, he was very, very sort of flamboyant sort of guy. You can imagine an older guy, and probably as my age is now, but I'm very experienced in this stuff. And he's going, oh yeah, I can do this and do that, and we can get these sports things in, and we can do all this stuff. And I said, yeah, but how much is it going to cost? And he says, $5,000. I said, oh, beauty. So I go back to my boss. I said, yeah, here's the designs, $5,000. And they go, wow, that's pretty good, $5,000. So off we go. We arrive at this zoo.
This pending feeling of doom.
My God. This place, it looks amazing. Now, he has got pots, massive pots of all the Australian bush plants and flowers, and they'd be $1,000 a pot, and
Wow.
there's like 10 of them. And the room, it looks amazing. He's got rowboats hanging from the roof, and turnstiles to get through, and you get a pass card to get through the turnstile, and all this sort of stuff that an athlete would experience. Amazing. Anyway, the bosses turned up, and they absolutely freak out because it's not a white tent. It's this amazing looking place.
Yeah.
And the Aramark guys freak out. They're trying to pick up these pot plants and take them outside because they don't want the organising committee to see, because we've spent all this money and blah, 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 and it's too extravagant. And I was absolutely, no, what have I done? And it's not it's not what I
Yeah,
do.
yeah,
I
yeah.
don't do
Yeah.
this sort of stuff. I just hired this guy and he did it all. But all fingers are pointing at me. And in an hour, I have to present my whole culinary thing. And I'm absolutely destroyed. And I've got to get up in an hour. And I can't present anyway because I'm so nervous. And then I'm sitting there and I've got my PowerPoint in front of me. And I'm reading it, and someone else is presenting, and I'm up next, and my legs are shaking. And I stood up and
Feeling for
started it,
you right now.
and my whole anyway, it was a bit like the Hong Kong thing. When I finished and we're sitting around talking, I felt relieved and all that.
Yeah.
And the head of the organising committee came up to me, he goes, oh my God, he goes, your presentation was outstanding. He said, it was really believable. Like, you have so much passion and so much this. And I'm going, really? Really? And that was what I say, turning a lemon into a health drink. That was a moment that
Yeah.
all of a sudden I felt like, wow, I'm actually not,
Too bad
it's
at
my
this.
weakness. I'm actually, people believe what I say. Oh my God, this is so good. And that was a big turning point. So, and I guess other things is taking jobs which are you're out of your depth.
Yeah.
And you're out of your depth. This opportunity, I like, executive chef of the MCG, when I took that role, it's like, oh, wow, I'm the executive chef. And all of a sudden, it's like the reality of it,
Executive.
because you're not a chef anymore. You're running
No.
a business, and it's,
Yeah.
millions of dollars, and you're purchasing, and it's we never learnt any of all this stuff.
Right.
So you had to wing it and learn it. But finishing the story of the zoo tender, of the Sydney Olympics tender, the bill came in, right? And the fee was $5,000. The building and the decorations and all that was another 30. So, yeah. So I've
Nearly
sat
able to
that,
talk to it.
and back in those days we had in trays, on our
Oh
desk.
my goodness.
And that invoice was in my in tray for a month, and this guy kept ringing me and ringing me and ringing me. And
That's a bit
and then
naughty though, isn't it?
I had but I had to
Yeah.
go. Well, it sort of made sense when you know.
Yeah.
And anyway, I was waiting for was, did we get the job? Did we get the job? Did we get the job? Because if we got the job, then I could go into my
Didn't
boss
matter.
and say,
Yeah. Yeah.
anyway. So in the end, I had to go in and
Fess up.
knock on the door, and it was a bit like going to see the executive chef when you've burnt all the turkeys or something.
Yeah.
And I go and I sit down, and he goes, "What do you want?" I said, "Oh," and he gave a little freak out, and then he sort of looked up and he goes, "Well, you're lucky we got the job, but it's not official yet." And he goes, "Don't ever do that again." Blah blah blah. I said, "Yeah, yeah." So yeah, I learned a lot from.
I
So
was gonna
that was a
say,
big experience too.
I would
So
I would
ask more
imagine that you
questions.
learnt a huge amount from that.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah, yeah,
dotting I's and crossing T's. But it's a really interesting story that you talk about. And as you know, I train coaches and I've
yeah.
worked with a number of chefs because the people that have come through, that are still chefs, and then when they're moving to the next level, they're actually having to present. And, they love being back of house with their own domain, with their own communication styles and everything else. But to step out of that and then actually present to corporate is a very different world. It's a very different place to be. And it's really unnerving. And if you're told that you've got a presentation to do in a couple of weeks' time,
Oh
those 2
man.
weeks are awful for someone who isn't actually able to, or doesn't think that they're able to public speak. Of course, everybody can.
Mm-hmm.
But when the nerves take over, it's a
It's a
really
teaching thing. Yeah,
yeah, and I've worked with about 6 chefs now in actually helping them in that process because, as you said, once you've done it, it's like, ugh, but actually having those steps and being able to polish and practice and step into it. But I mean, public speaking isn't the only thing in the chef's world that you have to learn on the go. As you said, you become an executive chef and suddenly you're communicating with everyone in the kitchen from different walks of life, from different cultural backgrounds. So these are really difficult communications and difficult things to navigate if you're not skilled in them.
absolutely. And the other part is, in a kitchen, there's a hierarchy. There's executive chef down, and everybody respects the hierarchy.
Yeah,
It's just a thing. Like what I mentioned, you start when you're 16. The
yeah,
executive chef back then you didn't even speak to, but now it's different, of course. But there's that hierarchy. So, but outside the kitchen, there's no hierarchy.
no,
You can debate and discuss, and you can discuss with your boss a different way, a pivot or another opportunity, and they might listen or they might not. But in a kitchen, there's no discussion, no debate. The executive chef says go, and you go. It's
yeah,
probably a bit different now, but that's
yeah,
that's pretty much how it all works. So I think that helped me a lot as well, though, that understanding the hierarchy
structure.
and understanding now the hierarchy outside of the kitchen once you become a business,
Yeah,
you know, in charge of a business, you have to deal with people that don't understand the kitchen and
yeah,
all
yeah.
that sort of stuff. So yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you could go back and whisper advice to yourself, during that transitional time, I suppose, sort of around the 30s, what would you say?
I'd probably say, well, look, another good question. I'd probably say, don't make it too complicated, which is what somebody told me, and ask more questions. Don't be fooled that you know all the answers. And that's probably, being 30, you're bulletproof, you're just bulletproof. You know everything. No
Yeah,
one
of
can
course you
tell
do. Of
you.
course you do.
You still sometimes think you do, but you don't. But back then you think you do. Your mid 20s to 30s, you're just invincible. and cocky and all those sorts of things. So yeah,
A few chefs have said that on this podcast.
ask more questions, be a bit more, you know, be a bit more understanding of the other side of the picture. That
Mm,
there's
mm.
there's more sides to a square than one.
Yeah, no, for sure. And how do you think, how do you think those challenges have kind of changed the way that you approach success today? I mean, you're running a big operation now. You're involved in mega global events.
Yeah, well, yeah. Sometimes you pinch yourself, and I think understanding the end goal, like to achieve success, you got to understand what is success. So, like the thrill of winning a tender is
Mm,
like winning a gold medal at the Culinary Olympics, or winning a premiership. That's the sort of you do all this work and you put all your ideas on, and someone decides that you're right. You out of all of them, your ideas are the best, and they have the confidence that you can do the duty. So you sort of, I guess that's understanding the end goal
mm,
is probably the success of it, but having the confidence in and staying within, mostly within your zone.
mm.
Like, you know, I worked as a consultant on big mega projects for a long time, and even when I was with Spotless, I probably classified myself still as a consultant back then in hindsight, because in the roles you took on, like run the Grand Prix,
Yeah.
run the spring racing, run a venue, do a tender. They were
Did you
all
just nonchalantly throw in, like running the Grand Prix?
yeah, but they were all start and finish projects. So if you have the confidence to take it from the start to finish, but then I was noticing when we were looking for tenderers for, say, athletes' villages, nobody was tendering because all the big companies didn't want to take risk, and all that sort of stuff. So we pivoted to actually do a tender instead of. So I was writing the tender to send out to the market. We sent it out. Nobody tendered, but it had to be a local company had to win the tender. This was in Taiwan.
Okay.
And then no one tendered, and we're running out of time. And I said, well, you need to change it to international
Yeah,
companies.
just face it.
Again, small conversation. Would you
Yeah,
tender? They
yeah,
said, would you tender?
yeah.
And and
I love that because it is actually it's about asking those questions because
yeah,
just because something is, and I mean we do the same with in our industries, with Paramount, quite often just because something says this is the way it is, when you're dealing with the authorities, doesn't mean it there may not be any rationale behind something which is in there. So, there's no reason why you can't ask the question and
yeah.
have things changed. But most people don't ask the questions.
So for us, that was a big pivot to move
Mm,
into, instead of consulting, we're now putting up the risk, the
yeah,
commercial risk. So, and we did. And then, of course, things don't go as planned, and you were so out of your depth, so out of your depth.
yeah,
Like a big company has deep pockets, or
yeah,
finances and all that. A small company, you've got what you've got, and you just have to cope with it.
to make it
And
work.
there were times in that journey, where the organising committee were late paying, and you're talking millions of dollars. It's not
Yeah, yeah,
hundreds of thousands of dollars. So that was probably, in business, the
yeah,
biggest learning curve of the lot,
yeah.
and there was probably the lowest points, I would say, in my business life, besides the COVID one, but we won't talk about that at all,
No, we won't. We don't.
but also the most success. So,
Yeah.
we proved that we could do it. And in fact, from that success, we did the Rugby World Cup
Mm,
in Japan,
yeah,
and
we bumped into you out there.
one of the highlights of my whole life career at work, we finished that job. And because it was retail, I
Mm,
hired a couple of Spotless boys from retail that I'd worked with, because I never did retail. I was always in corporate,
yeah,
and
yeah,
the retail's completely different. People say it's very similar, but it's more logistics. Anyway, so at the end of it, we had a big party, of course, and We probably spent far too much on the party, but we were so, yeah, it was a fantastic moment for
It
us.
was such an amazing vibe out
It
there.
was an amazing event, and, these guys, these retail guys said to us, "Pete, it was like catering in the '80s. We had so much fun." And you know what? I had so much fun, but it was for other guys who you work with for years go, "That was so much fun." It was a really it was like a respect thing, but
Yeah,
I just felt so good. It wasn't
yeah.
about making money. It wasn't about how big and how many beers we sold and all that sort of
No,
stuff.
no,
It was
the
we did
vibe.
it, we could accomplished it, and along the way we had fun and made friends, you know.
That's a pretty cool thing, isn't it? That's what at the end of the day, I mean, that's pretty much what the food industry is all about, isn't it?
Yeah.
And, I mean, just let's just talk about, the dark times in the food industry, when you were tendering or not tendering, but when you were in a contract and, then suddenly, as you said, cash flow starts to dry up and things aren't happening. I mean, how did you deal with that? What was the hardest part about that?
Well, yeah, you sort of you gotta talk to people.
Yeah.
So you gotta talk to people.
I was hoping you were gonna say that.
You gotta talk to people.
Yeah.
For me, when things get hard, I work harder.
Yeah.
So, I just focus more and it's incredible how you can and you've gotta trust your instincts. And, people say your gut feeling. Well, there's no such thing as a gut feeling. It comes from your brain because it comes from all those things you've done and said and heard and
Yeah.
read
I think it's
and an
connected.
and an answer comes to you. And,
Yeah.
you know, you the if someone hasn't paid you, then there's ways you achieve to get paid. And if it's a HR issue, well, then you have to confront it and deal with it. If it's a supply issue, so it's all different things.
Yeah.
One of the things we laugh now, but
But yeah,
there's a
no, not
couple of
when
people that
you're in it,
there's a couple of
it's not
people that won't laugh. So in Taiwan, all food waste had to be recycled. It had to go through to these farmers, right? So all restaurants had these blue bins, and you put all your food scraps in it. And small restaurants had them in the street, and the waiters would leave the restaurant, walk out the front, scrape into these blue bins,
mm,
and then the pig farmer would drive on in his flat tray truck and pick them up and exchange these blue bins. Well, we're doing 40,000 meals a day. We're filling up 30 or 40 or 50 of these bloody
mm.
blue bins, and of course the farmer can't keep up. And so now I've got 100 of these blue bins full of food waste. It's 38 degrees, the humidity, it's decomposing out there. And it's oozing over. And so a couple of blokes were put in charge of fixing this. And I thought to myself, I'm going to lose these guys for sure. And the gumboots came on and the hoses came out. And anyway, they helped these farmers come up with solutions to use this waste. Because if you send it to the normal waste stream, the government would give you huge fines.
Yeah, yeah.
But the funny part of the story is the pig farmer came back to us. So they put all this food through a grinder. When the athletes clear their plates, because it's self-clearing, sometimes they just throw the forks in with the food waste.
No,
Of course, and the forks were jamming the grinder, and I had to buy a new grinder for the farmer to make him take more food waste. So we had to do this. So whether he needed a new grinder or not, he
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 got
said to
one.
me, "I've got to get a new grinder." So that was,
Yeah,
But yeah, look, dark times, we all have them, but talk to people.
yeah.
Sometimes you can't talk to people,
Mm,
but then you have to have a solution. You work on the
yeah.
solution,
Gotta find a
you
way.
know. Sometimes things are best kept to yourself and, because in the business you're in, it's hard to show weakness as well. I know that's not for everything, but in some things,
Mm,
you have to show strength and people's persona of you
yeah,
is important.
yeah. Well, because they need to respect and
Yeah,
they need to be able to trust that you're
that's
leading in a
correct.
way, even when you know that I think having that confidence though to ask the questions and to also having the relationships with people so that when things are tough, you can actually come back and talk to them. And I'm sure that through the process of tendering, you've learnt that, dotting the I's and crossing the T's, that the contracts are for the bad times.
Yeah.
So when you have to go back to them, sort of going through those tenders and really looking at the actual clauses in tenders, which you think, "No, that could come back to bite me at some point."
Yeah.
So I'm not gonna agree to that, but we can do
Mm.
it a slightly different way.
Yeah.
So if we get to the heart of the episode, if you could give your 30-year-old self just maybe 3 pieces of advice, what would they be?
Oh my goodness. Thousands. There's thousands.
I know, I
Behave
know.
yourself. Behave yourself, be number one. No. Invest, I would say invest, even small amounts of, and I'm talking about financially, finance investing,
Yeah,
even small amounts over a long period of time as you get older can really, really, assist in what you're
yeah,
doing.
yeah,
I mean, I'd say don't be sucked into 30-year mortgages and stuff like that. I mean, it was always, when we were young, you gotta buy a house, you gotta do this,
yeah.
Mate, the
Don't
banks own you.
anymore.
The banks own you, and you're just
Yeah,
paying interest for so long. But invest small amounts, whatever you can afford. And if you think of it, if you go 2 cups of coffee a week for a month is
yeah,
$50,
yeah,
right? $50, that's a month over 25 years. It's a lot of money.
yeah.
$100, it doesn't have to be huge amounts of money.
It has
Just
to be
think
consistent.
has to be consistent, but think about, because I mean, we used to measure our pay rises in how many beers we could
Mm,
buy.
mm, I know.
When I started work, I get
I don't think
75
that's
bucks,
changed too much.
75 bucks a week, and that was 150 beers I could buy. You sort of like, really stupidness, but anyway, that's it. You know, educate yourself, and educating yourself can be many different things. You
Mm,
know, like the internet now, you can find any information of anything in the whole world, any book, any document, anything you have an interest in.
yeah. There's no excuses
Educate
anymore, is
yourself,
there?
but also be careful what you're looking at, because not everything you're reading is right. But I mean, self-evaluation is critical.
Yeah.
We all have good, bad, and ugly parts, right?
Mm, mm,
Hopefully, we have more good parts than bad, and hopefully we have more better parts than ugly. But there are times when you are bad, and there are parts when you're really ugly. So, and I'm not talking about beauty; I'm talking about
no.
within.
Yeah,
So, your good, bad, and ugly parts, and work on them. Make things for the better. You know, if you're aggressive, and you admit to yourself you're aggressive, work on
yeah,
that.
yeah.
If you're unscrupulous, sometimes you need to be, but
Mm,
mostly you don't. And stick to your morals. Sometimes you need to take the high ground, not always. Only
mm,
fight the battles that are worth winning. But
I love
you
that.
know, the morals run your life,
Mm,
and managing your own internal beast, I suppose.
yeah, yeah,
We all have demons. We talk about mental health.
yeah,
Mental health is probably, in my life, is in the last 5 years. Before that, we didn't
yeah.
we didn't call it mental health.
No.
We just call it harden up. Just harden
Yeah.
up.
Yeah, yeah,
Just work
yeah,
harder. Just,
yeah.
what are you talking about? You can't. That's all bullshit. You can't be talking like that. Just harden up. What are you crying about?
Yeah,
Go and buy yourself a pair of socks and pull them up.
yeah,
And I've said that to people. You need
yeah,
to go
yeah,
and buy a
yeah.
pair of socks on the way
Been a
home
tough
because you're not
world,
wearing
isn't
any.
it? Yeah.
So, but you really need to do some self analysis and talk to people.
Mm,
So invest, educate, and do what's morally right on your own compass. Everyone's moral compass is different. Some people are religious, some people aren't. Some people come from the school of hard knocks. Whatever it is,
yeah,
you have your rules. Stick to them. Always stick to them for
yeah.
whatever happens.
And I think that's really sound advice, and I think a lot of people maybe aren't actually intentionally aware of what those goals, of what those morals or those values are, and And that I think one of the things that has come out in this podcast when I've been talking to people is that 30 was a fairly significant time of when those values were starting to really, I suppose, be defined within self, because you were no longer underneath the parent banner. I mean, obviously some people by 30 are well out of sort of their parental kind of guidance and control, but some aren't. Sort of really being aware of what your values are, what drives you, because once you've got that, then you can be true to them. Because if you don't know what they are, it's pretty hard to actually say, well, yeah, this is what I'm doing, this is where I'm going, and you carry on in these cycles of things which really lack self-awareness.
Yeah. No, very, very good point.
Mm. So, Pete, that's really powerful. Do you think that younger professionals now and entrepreneurs, do you think they're struggling with the same things that we did, or do you think they're facing a completely different world now?
Oh, look, it's the same.
Yeah.
Technology's different, I mean, we carry around a device where we can access all information in the world at all times. I mean, I used to have to buy cookbooks. If I wanted a recipe, I had to have a cookbook. If
Yeah.
I'm writing a new menu, I'd go and buy a lot of cookbooks. And now I can sit there and just look at Instagram and I never used to read recipe. I just look at pictures,
Yeah.
get some inspiration for something. But, as a chef, you're always writing recipes, but it's so much easier now. But it's so much
Maybe,
easier
isn't it?
for everyone. So, you know, I guess the difference, I don't know, it's a hard one. If you invested when I was 30,
Mm.
if you invested in research and development, you had a better opportunity, but now everyone has. But I still, if you apply the time,
Yeah.
but, you can scroll, like you scroll on Instagram or Facebook, whatever. Everyone's telling you the 3 things in life, the 7 things in life, the 5
Yeah,
things in
yeah.
life. You go, "Oh my god, if I
It's
listen to
all
all
a
these
hack.
gurus." But yeah, look, I think it's the same challenges.
Yeah.
You have the same, maybe the opportunities are a little bit different,
Mm.
but,
Well, they're quicker, aren't they?
y
That's for sure. And the
you know,
online
th
space.
you make your opportunities if you want
Yeah.
them or you don't.
That's
It's
true
up to
enough
an
as well.
individual.
Yeah, and learning how to ask those good questions will increase any amount of opportunities that coming in.
Yeah.
Peter, going back or even now, I mean, it could be sort of when you were younger or sort of at any time sort of between 30 onwards. But what's the best advice you ever got? And who gave it to you?
Whoa, there's many, many people. I mean, I talked before about the interview at the MCG. The
Mm,
corporate executive chef back then was a guy called David Payne, who you probably know.
mm,
And I would say in my career, he's probably been I've had many mentors, but he's probably been the most important and most influential in particular in the event space. But giving me the opportunity, he saw that I've never done corporate catering, but
yeah.
here you are giving an opportunity. He could see, there's opportunity.
You thought you were capable.
He came up with the phrase, "I should have asked more questions." He said, on his tombstone, I mean, we did the Rio Olympics together,
Yeah.
and that was probably the greatest and the worst event of all. But during that event, he said, on my tombstone, it's gonna say, "Here lies David Payne. I should have asked more questions." And that's always stuck with me since then because it's a true thing.
Yeah.
John Hale, who was one of the executives of Spotless, he told me, he said, he goes, You'd make a great consultant. You should really look at that." And that was post Sydney Olympics. And a couple of years later, I bought into a consultancy business. So that was,
Yeah.
somebody really who I admired as a leader
Yeah.
of the empire of catering. This guy's almost running a $2 billion business, and he's telling me, "Wow, you should do this."
Yeah.
And
He saw that in you.
that spun around in my head but I would never probably have even thought of that.
Yeah.
I didn't even know what a consultant was there, to be honest.
Yeah.
Um, the guy from Aramark who had done 14 Olympics.
Wow.
So so we're sitting there in a room designing the menu for the Australian Sydney Olympics, and I'm doing a 15-day cycle menu because I think it was a 21-day event. That I don't want everyone eating anything twice. So, and this guy's a great big, he's probably in his late 60s. He's done 14 athletes villages. So he's in my life, you've never met any. Now, when I look back,
Yeah.
at the time, he was just this American guy who knew everything and you
Yeah.
couldn't tell him anything. Right? And he goes to me, Pete, you're making it far too complicated. He goes, all they want to eat is penne and red sauce. Just give them penne and red sauce. They're just kids, right? And I'm going, no, it's Australian. We're going to do it like this. We're going to do it like that. I think in the end, we cut it back to 8 days. The Monday's menu came on Tuesday, so it was a
Yeah.
bit different. But you know what? Every time I do something since maybe a couple of years after that, after we
Yeah.
finished the games and I realized this guy was so right,
Yeah.
everything he
Keep it
said
simple.
happened. Just don't overcomplicate anything. Short conversations change your life and just keep it. I don't say keep it simple because that's not, I don't mean simple, but don't
Yeah.
make it complicated. You know, get the right people around you and don't make it complicated. And then, of course, there's a family, my brother, brother Bill, who we worked together for many years. He lives up in Sunshine Coast now.
Mm.
Taught me a lot about relationships, family relationships in particular, but also, working with other people. Like,
Mm.
I was the boss, he was the boss sometimes, we worked together, but he would always give me watch out points, like this person, that person, you need to deal like this, you need to, So he was quite, sort of quite the union guy on relationships and had
Okay.
a very strong moral compass.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the old man, my father, I guess he instilled the commitment and respect. You take a job, you commit to it. Don't just take a job for the sake of it, but you sign that contract, you fulfill that contract.
Yeah.
There's no half measures. That's it.
No, I
So,
love that.
I
No
admire that
backdoor.
too. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's a commitment.
And worst advice, I don't know. Worst advice, I don't really know. I've made some pretty poor decisions along the way, but I don't know if I've got poor advice. I've been conned into some businesses that failed, of course, as we all have. But
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think, I've heard a lot of people tell me a lot of stuff, and you sort of yes, no, yes, no.
Mm.
Um, again, in your 30s, all advice was good advice. You
Yeah,
listen to everyone.
exactly. Exactly.
I remember, I'm trying to think of his name. We did a leadership training course once back in the late 80s, early 90s with Spotless.
Mm.
Oh, his name will come to me
Yeah.
because there wasn't that many around. And he had this thing about toolbox. A
Okay.
toolbox to
I
me
know who
was a
you mean. Yeah. I'll think of it as well in a minute.
French name. Was it a French name? Anyway, toolbox. So, you've got everything in a toolbox. And my toolbox had, a paring
Yeah.
knife, a melon ball or a whisk and a spoon. I'm going, now what's this guy talking about?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
he
yeah.
talked about, emotional values and all this sort of stuff,
Yeah.
put it all in your toolbox. And every now and then you got to open that toolbox and take out that tool
Yeah.
to fit the situation. And I think, that was the worst advice I ever had and the best advice because it was worse advice because I didn't know what the hell he was
He
talking
was
about for
talking about
years.
anyway.
So I had this toolbox and I had my angry tool and I had my, this tool and that tool. I
Yeah.
used to say, right, you know, but it also made you control those things for a short period of
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
But then when I realized later on, when you became a true leader, I suppose, um, that became very, very important.
Yeah. That a lot of that has to
Mm,
become conscious, unconscious, doesn't it? It's got to be, yeah. So, Peter, we've covered the deep stuff. Now let's have a bit of fun. I'm going to
yes.
hit you with some quick fire questions. Don't overthink them. And you've already had them anyway. But If you could have lunch with any historical figure, who would it be?
Well, define historical figure, but I'd say, look, there's many. I'd say Arnie Schwarzenegger, Marco Pierre White, and
Yes.
Shane Warne, probably. Shane Warne I met a couple of times through working at the MCG, and he was quite like most successful cricketer in my life. But
Yeah,
I
yeah.
love cricket. But he was just a larrikin. So interesting guy. Schwarzenegger because self-driven man.
Mm.
If you read stuff about Arnie Schwarzenegger, he is just an incredible human being. Not
So
just the
disciplined, isn't he?
bodybuilding,
Yeah.
but how he actually invented himself as a kid,
Mm.
to actually be able to travel and do what he, fulfill his dreams. And Marco Pierre White, because hey, in the culinary world, if I put my chef hat back on, he's now the living grandfather of culinary in the world. But
Yeah.
he brought cuisine to the United Kingdom,
Yeah. Yeah.
and sort of the basis of modern cuisine is outside of the French.
Yeah.
His adaptation, I guess. So those three guys. There's many more, but in a short sentence,
That would be a
Tony,
fun
Marco,
table,
and
wouldn't it,
Warnie.
for lunch? A real fun table
Yeah.
for lunch.
Well,
So
it'd be an interesting time.
it would be indeed. So what's a guilty pleasure you refuse
Well,
to apologise for?
I don't really have that many, and it's a hard. I thought about that a bit. I'd say, look, I love having ice cream late at night, to be honest,
Brilliant.
and
That's
I
a
probably
great one.
shouldn't. Getting older, you're trying to always fighting with the calories and keeping fit, but cigars and whiskey, I must say I like a nice high quality cigar and a high quality whiskey.
Okay.
Every year I like to go to a test match for a couple of days and get on the grog and eat steaks and enjoy myself. But yeah, not too many, I'm pretty boring and that
It's
sort of
harder,
stuff.
isn't it?
It is harder. Yeah.
When you're working and, sort of and you've got to keep a clear head, it's, not so easy to do that these days.
Yeah.
So if your 30-year-old self had a theme song, what would it be?
Wow. Yeah, look, I would say 6 months in a leaky boat by Split Ends would be, because sometimes and if you listen to the lyrics, sometimes you think you are in a leaky boat. And, another quick story, we were at the Rio Olympics, and I was working with David Payne,
Yeah.
great mate and mentor. We went to this island, Ilha Grande Island, for a weekend to get away from it all, and it was this amazing island.
Mm.
And, you can only get there on a boat. So we get there on this ferry. We bought a one-way ticket. We stayed in some, what was supposed to be luxury accommodation. It was pretty crappy. There's no cars on the island, and it was, one of those weekends, relaxing. But hey, anyway, we have to get back. So, th the person who owned the accommodation goes, "Oh, we have this friend, and we got this boat, and blah blah blah." Again, should have asked more questions. So David organises this boat. The boat was about 500, 50 centimeters wide, and it was a canoe basically with this tiny little outboard motor on the back. And of course, the guys, it was me and David, and there was all these other people, and they've all got backpacks, and some guy had a suitcase, and he's going, right, we've got to put this here and this there. And we're going across the sea, like for kilometers in this boat. I can't swim 50 meters. We've got lifeboats on, we're hanging on, the water splashing in. At some point, he actually
Yeah.
got in the shallow water on this coral, got off, and pulled the boat through these rocky sort of crevices. And we're sitting there. And then Dave, that's when we came up with, just spend 6 hours on a leaky boat. But it sort of resonates with me when you read the lyrics. It's, you're in, you're literally in it, but sometimes in your life, you feel like you're in a leaky boat, you know, and you're
So
paling out.
yeah, exactly. Always bailing out. But that's one of the pleasures of being in business, isn't it?
Mm.
What's one thing you absolutely sucked at in your 30s, but you've mastered now?
Look, probably communications, you like we talked about, you got to talk about stuff.
Yeah.
If things got tough, you just worked harder and closed off. But, again, public speaking, that I was just absolutely terrified. Walking out that kitchen door, even going into the restaurant, talking to customers, the fear of rejection and all those sort of things. I mean, Dale Carnegie was my friend back then,
Yeah.
and I remember I had to and I used to do the speech in front of a mirror to yourself,
Yeah.
and it's embarrassing. You're sort of talking to yourself, but I found that quite that was one of his things to do,
Yeah.
and it sort
Yeah.
of worked. But yeah, I guess public speaking was my biggest fear. Yeah,
Yeah.
failing in
Yeah,
general.
failing. Well, that's it, isn't it? That fear of rejection or that fear of judgment. And I think that's something that as you get older becomes less and less significant in your life and the
Hello?
actions you take, your behavior. Because not that you don't care, but I think you're probably more confident in yourself through experiences and everything else. It does get better. Pete, that was incredible. I know so many listeners are going to resonate with your stories, and there's a lot of them. And I
Thank you.
know we could go on all day probably with all the different stories. But before we wrap up, let's do a quick recap. What's the single biggest takeaway that you would like people to remember from our conversation?
Oh, look, dream big, and follow your dreams. Like the world is so big. I am one of the most lucky people alive.
Yeah.
I travel the world, go to many countries, explore, do, and I don't mean you don't have to leave the country.
No.
Explore within, you know, where are you? What do you want to do?
Yeah.
If you go to work and you hate what you do, man, you work a long time.
Yeah.
You work a long time.
So
I
true.
reckon I have more fun now than I've ever had. This has been my busiest year of my life at work, and enjoy it. You've got to enjoy it. Enjoy what you do. If you're not enjoying what you do, and success is overrated. What is success? Is success having lots of money? Is
Mm,
success being healthy? Is success having enough money? Is success just being happy?
yeah.
You gotta evaluate what is your success, but enjoy yourself, right?
Yeah.
You live once,
Yeah.
trust yourself, trust your instincts, and enjoy yourself. Everyone can reflect on what's in the past, but
Yeah.
you don't know what's in the future,
No.
right? And I keep saying small conversations. If you say yes, will you marry me? Yes. Small conversation. Do you want a promotion? Yes. I will take the job. Yes. They're all small conversations.
Yeah.
They all change your life.
Yeah.
Do you want to go overseas? Yes. They're 10-word conversations. So don't overcomplicate it and just follow your dream. And if you are unhappy, don't be unhappy. Don't live your life unhappy.
Yeah. I love that. Pete, and for everyone listening, here's my challenge to you. Take one thing from today's episode and apply it to your life this week. Maybe it's reaching out to someone who can mentor you. Maybe it's finally taking that leap you've been scared of. Whatever it is, take action. And as Peter says, if you're unhappy, change it. If this episode inspired you, make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. And if you have a question or a topic you want me to cover in a future episode, send me a message. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for tuning in to What I Wish I Knew at 30. Remember, your best chapters are still ahead. So see you next time. So, Peter, thank you so much for joining me on What I Wish I Knew at 30. And thank you so much. I can't wait to get this episode live. And from me, it's goodbye. And from Peter,
Thank you very much, Fran, and thank you so much for the opportunity. And to everyone who logs in and has a look, thanks for listening.
yeah, thank you so much, everybody.
Cheers.
Cheers.